Do you know, Deborah or Jonathan, if other states or big cities have an indoor vaccine mandate?
Yes, San Francisco has something similar. New Orleans also has something, and others are looking at it. But San Francisco is the one that are the most similar to New York. Though San Francisco does not apply it to entertainment venues. It's just restaurants and gyms.
And I've noticed that some businesses that are nationwide are saying, these rules will apply all over the country. And I've seen a couple that say, with the exception of Florida and Texas. So
well, we're a 2,000 lawyer firm and actually headquartered in Miami, and we are nationally gone to full vaccine for all employees, even in Florida and Texas. And even with all these vaccine passport bans, nobody has tried to yet mess with employers, instituting requirements on their own,
right.
Customers and patrons and things like that. But so far, they came close in Arizona. There was actually a bill to extend it to employees, but it didn't pass. But still, at this point, no state, even states like Florida and Texas, which are so anti, government mandate on vaccines, have not prevented employers from doing what imposing restrictions on their own staff.
I thought they did for the cruise ship industry in Florida. I thought he didn't want the cruise ships who had.
They went to court and they knocked it. At least for now, a judge has ruled in favor of the cruise ships, saying that they can still be allowed to require vaccines.
Okay. So it's 4:01. Let's give a couple more minutes and see if anyone else joins.
Great.
Thank you. It's an unusual time of day. All of our committee meetings, our board meetings are at 6:30, but we had a scheduling issue in all of the September evenings because of the Jewish holidays and Labor Day.
Yeah. It makes it tough.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know what? There's always a problem whenever we have a webinar. It's like either too early or too late. It just there's never a good time.
Yeah, I know, and it's harder with small business owners too, who are busy with their shops, their restaurants, whatever their businesses are, but we'll just give it a couple more minutes. And I think people who are used to our 6:30 meetings may also be not used to signing in at 4 o'clock. But I don't want to, out of respect for your time, I don't want to wait. Why don't we get started? And anyone who joins will join. So How does that sound? Good?
Sounds good. Yeah.
Good, and thank you both. Okay, well, hello, everyone. Welcome to Community Board 8 Small Business Meeting for September. We're having this meeting on the indoor vaccination mandate, hoping that it will help those businesses who are required to comply. There's a lot of information and requirements, so we wanted to help make it easier for small business owners who may not have the time or the inclination to parse through the varied regulations and rules that apply. So my name is Alita Camp, and I co-chair the Small Business Committee with Valerie Mason. Valerie's not here today, but we're lucky to have our speakers, Deborah Gurov and Jonathan Bing, who will address the issues and requirements and answer any questions. So I'd like to just take a moment, sorry, I'm reaching, to read their bios, because they're both very impressive, and I'm really happy that we're able to have them here. So Deborah Guzov is CRE Esquire is the founder and head partner at Guzov LLC, a woman-owned law firm operating in New York City. Alongside her extensive experience in complex commercial litigation, she specializes in strategizing and negotiating high-stakes business transactions, in addition to drafting licensing, distribution, operating shareholder, and employment agreements. As a seasoned attorney and a savvy small business owner, Deborah is well-versed in helping people accomplish their business goals. Deborah is an advocate for small businesses, and over the years has been instrumental in facilitating the success of countless startup and small business. Thank you so much for being here, Deborah. And I'm sorry I mispronounced your name first thing, but thank you.
It happens all the time. Thank you very much.
Jonathan L. Bing is a shareholder in the government law and policy practice of Greenberg Traurig New York City and Albany offices. He is an experienced advocate who advises corporate, association, and nonprofit clients in the entertainment, financial services, healthcare, transportation, and social services fields. He helps clients advance legislation in the New York State Legislature and New York City Council, secure funding from state and city budgets, and navigate New York City government. Jonathan's practice extends to the hospitality field, where he advocates for clients, including restaurant and hotel chains, on liquor licensing and related matters before community boards, city agencies, and the New York State Liquor Authority. During the pandemic, he has provided reopening guidance across the country to companies in the advertising, financial services, restaurant, retail, and lifestyle brand industries. Prior to joining Greenberg Traurig, he was elected to 5 terms in the New York State Assembly, representing the Upper East Side and East Midtown Manhattan, and was appointed by Governor Andrew Cuomo as a special deputy superintendent of the New York State Department of Financial Services. So thank you to Jonathan for giving us your time and for being here. I know that you both have a lot of expertise in this particular area, because I heard you speak and was very impressed. So I'm delighted that they're here. And without any further ado, I'd like to welcome Deborah and Jonathan to our meeting. So thank you both for being here, and the floor is yours.
Thank you. So I will lead. Thank you, everyone, for live streaming in, for those who are watching on live stream. I think that, both Jonathan and I feel that this is so important that we share information with the small business community. The only way everyone's going to weather this storm is to really join together and share information. So with that, I am going to share my screen. I have a PowerPoint presentation. I am happy to provide it to those who are watching. My email address is on the presentation, and if anyone wants a copy of it, happy to share that information. Okay, so we start off with the proposition that this has become a very complicated situation, and a lot of people feel very blindsided by it. And of course, it's very controversial that many people feel that small businesses are really being hurt by the city's initiatives. But there was certainly a good thought behind it, and that was to have the capability to return to some sort of normalcy and enjoy everything that New York has to offer, including, all of the entertainment and restaurants. So how did we get here? In the first instance, a lot of people question, where did the mayor get the power to enforce, to bring this legislation into action? And the answer is there is definite opportunity based on Emergency Executive Order number 98, which was employed due to the fact that we were in a state of emergency due to the pandemic. And okay, so let's talk about who is responsible to meet these guidelines. And the list is very lengthy. Jonathan will go into this in more detail, but every and any entertainment venue, with some exceptions, has to comply with the vaccine mandate, which means employees have to be vaccinated and patrons have to be vaccinated. And there has to be a procedure to check the vaccination cards and to verify the identity of the person who is providing the vaccine card. So this entails a partial list. And what we've seen is in the most outspoken advocates against this requirement, it has been the restaurant industry, because, as we know, the restaurant industry was hit so hard, and so many employees in New York rely on employment through our many wonderful restaurants. Fitness centers, another favorite pastime for all of us in New York. Every and any type of fitness center, even some of the fitness centers that are holding the outdoor classes, they are and have to check vaccine status. One thing to keep in mind, of course, we cannot give legal advice through this presentation. If people have questions or require advice, of course, I'm available, Jonathan's available on a one-on-one basis, as well as other resources that provide legal advice. But one very general piece of non-legal advice is, if you're not sure, it's always better to err on the side of caution, so that you do not fall into a category where you thought you were exempt and you weren't, and you end up with a fine. Outdoor establishments do not have to check for vaccine status. That means all of the structures we have on the sidewalk, roadways, if you have an outdoor cafe and people are sitting in the outdoor cafe, the requirement is not there to check for vaccine status. There are exceptions. I represent a lot of co-ops and condos in New York City. And of course, through this whole mess, we have guided our buildings about how to deal with COVID. But this particular requirement on vaccination is not impacting private residential buildings or office buildings, senior centers, community centers, etc. So, proof of vaccination, who actually needs to provide that proof? It's essentially everyone. And there are some distinctions, and Jonathan will go through that. There are instances when someone comes to work within your venue, let's say a contractor, and they're not a New York resident. There will be exceptions where those people fit in. That said, every business has the right, within certain guidelines, to make its rules. So a business can have more extreme measures and can say, I will not allow an outside contractor to come in unless they're vaccinated. But what we're presenting right now is the minimum that everyone needs to abide by. Of course, children, right now it's children under 12. We all know that recently there was some indication that the Pfizer vaccine would be appropriate for children 5 and up. So of course, this is fluid, it might change. But of course, if children are coming in, they don't need to provide this vaccine card if they're under 12, but they do have to wear a mask when they're not eating. And of course, some of this is also just intuitive for all of us now and to abide by social distancing. So how are we going to check it? And one of the things for small businesses to consider is, look, this is an unfortunate circumstance that everyone's in, that we have to deal with a horrible health situation, and we need to deal with it as efficiently as possible. So a lot of businesses are using these apps. There have been a lot of companies that have stepped forward with apps that allow a business to work more seamlessly through the process. And of course, those are things that should be considered by businesses. But just a photo of the CDC card, a copy of it, and some actual state identification so that you know the card matches up to the person who's presenting you with the card. And basically, someone who has one dose, and this is sort of a strange distinction because the immunity is not necessarily there just from one dose, but as long as you have one dose, you're okay. Another thing we've heard about in the news is that there is this situation where people are putting together fake vaccination cards and selling them. It is not incumbent for a restaurant to verify the accuracy of a card. That said, if you believe someone is providing a fake identification card, a fake vaccine identification card, then there is a place to make a complaint through the Attorney General's office. And here's the list of the various vaccines that will be appropriate. We must keep in mind that in New York, where a city that has a lot of tourists from all parts of the world, so there are a wide array of vaccines that would be acceptable from people outside of the US. So in trying to come up with the best solution for how a business goes forward with this whole procedure, the best practices, and I think if anything comes out of our presentation today, it should be how to cover yourself, make it seamless, and make sure that in the future, you have everything documented properly. So having one person in the business who is in charge of looking at the cards and logging in information, if that's your procedure, that's important. Always have everything documented. Put it in your employee handbooks. Make memoranda to your employees. Make sure everyone knows what the requirements are. And the reason we say this is sometimes people are the subject of investigation. Someone comes in to inspect, and there's some question as to whether procedure was properly followed. And your best insurance policy is to show that you have a written procedure and that it is your intention and to follow it, and you have followed it. So papering everything and making it clear to employees and putting one person in charge will make this a more seamless process. There are people, unfortunately, we've heard about disputes. It is unbelievable to us that there has been physical violence over a request for a vaccine card. There are some ways to give your employees training about how to de-escalate these situations. It might also be helpful to speak to your local police precinct to have someone talk to employees about how to de-escalate situations. Hopefully, these are one-off events that will not recur. But of course, we want to keep patrons and employees safe, and we should avoid conflict wherever possible. But of course, while keeping in the confines of the law. So what happens if someone says, gee, I won't comply, but I need to go in the bathroom. I need to quickly run into the bathroom. There are exceptions. Jonathan will go through this in more detail, but there are exceptions where someone's just coming to quickly pick up food or pay a bill. They're running into the locker room in the gym just to change quickly, and they need to use the restroom. Those people, they haven't complied. They can enter the premises. They must be wearing a mask. They must maintain social distances. But there are instances where someone can come on the premises, notwithstanding the fact that they haven't met the vaccination requirements. Enforcement. This is something that we all need to be aware of. There has been enforcement, and Jonathan will address the fact that there are fines to be imposed for failing to meet the requirements. There are inspections, there are enforcement actions. So far, there have been warnings issued and not fines. But as this progresses, there could be fines. So that is an unfortunate circumstance because the fines can get rather high. It's $1,000 for the first offense, and then it goes up from there. And it's certainly not another expense a business needs, especially when businesses are trying to get back on their feet. So making sure you're within the bounds of the law is going to be important for the profitability of your business. Accommodations. So for employees, there are requirements to accommodate. We can't provide employment advice, but generally it's an accommodation to work from home, working through the situation and trying to come up with an alternate. So right now, this is an issue for employers to accommodate. Businesses right now generally don't need to make that determination. I'm sure this will be fleshed out further as to someone coming forward and saying, oh, look, I have a letter from my doctor. I can't be vaccinated for X, Y, and Z reason. Obviously, businesses have to pay attention as those accommodations evolve. And there are places where patrons can go if they're going to complain for failure to accommodate. So obviously other types of accommodation must remain in effect, but accommodating on the vaccine issue is an issue which right now is up in the air. Signage. Every business has to have a sign. We provide a link to create the sign. The sign has to have specific parameters. I've noticed in my Upper East Side neighborhood, I don't see the signs in some establishments yet. Everyone needs a sign. It's easy to print it out, put it in the window, make sure it is displayed visibly. Again, an insurance policy against getting a fine is showing you followed the rules. This is the sign that you can download from the internet. And so, I've sort of touched on this, and the question is, what can restaurants do about this? What can small businesses do about this? And businesses have tried to pursue a legal remedy, arguing that this is an arbitrary and capricious measure. And they started what's called Article 78 proceedings to try and get a court to basically step in and say, nope, this is arbitrary and capricious. It is not going to stand. Thus far, there has been no success with that. That said, we do stay on top of these things. I post things on LinkedIn. Jonathan posts things on LinkedIn. I do have an Instagram page for Guzov LLC. And on that page, we post little boxes with updates relating to the litigation, as well as, points to keep in mind, points to be aware of for small businesses. So basically, we will keep an eye on this, but so far, no success. Okay, so safety concerns, I touched on that briefly. Everyone wants to keep their staff safe. Obviously, there should be a protocol if someone becomes belligerent about the measure. Have another employee come by, have a manager come by, and if necessary, the police will have to be called. It's, again, an unfortunate circumstance, and we were talking about people saying that employees were concerned for their health and their safety by putting themselves in these positions. So education of your employees on how to de-escalate will be essential. So, what can businesses do? Well, of course, the first thing we're doing today is we're sharing information, and that is key in getting through a very difficult time together. It is important to stay up to date. It's important to look at the New York Forward page, lobby, speak to the mayor's office, call your legislative representatives, get information, try to set forth your position. And the other great resource that I'm involved in and Jonathan's involved in is the Manhattan Chamber of Commerce. If you have questions, they have a help desk that can assist you, and they also provide invaluable information for small businesses on these topics. Okay, sources. And thank you. After Jonathan's presentation, we will answer any questions if there are any. And of course, please feel free to reach out to me with any questions. And thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Deborah. And let's turn it over to Jonathan at this point. And thanks for sticking around for questions. At that time, we'll also go through the meeting protocol. Hi, Jonathan.
Great. Thank you, Alita, and thank you for the invitation to speak today. I see many people on the Zoom who I've known since the beginning of my career. On the East Side, Barry and Judy and Matt and of course, your board is only as good as its district manager, and you have the best in Will Brightbill, who I got to work with in Dan's office, and now as your district manager, and you are very lucky to have him overseeing all your issues. I'm sure the blood center alone could make up one's life work. And doing all the other things he does. So again, and I see Kaz. So again, a lot of people who I've known for a long time. So I will share my screen. There we go. So again, it's a pleasure also to work with Deborah. Deborah and I did this presentation for the Manhattan Chamber of Commerce, as Alita said, and it was a great opportunity to work with her. I'm glad to have the chance to work with her again because she's so knowledgeable on this. So again, For those of you, Alita introduced me. I know many of most of you, but formerly represented the Upper East Side and East Midtown in the State Assembly. Community Board 8 was one of the two primary boards in my district. My mother was a Community Board 8 member in the late 80s and early 90s, so long time history with the board, and again, it's a pleasure to be with all of you. There's the bio that was read, and I'll have my contact information at the end. Again, like Deborah, I do post updates on these issues on LinkedIn, so many of you I think I'm already connected with, but if not, please send me an invitation. So again, just to point out, we're not providing legal advice, and any specific questions about the mandate and how it applies to your business or to you personally, should be directed to your legal counsel or human resources professional to determine the best course of action based on specific facts and circumstances. We're just giving a general overview of what the situation is, but obviously, if there's a specific question to how to operate your business or something in your life, please direct it to the professional in this area. And the FAQ, a lot of what I'm talking about today are based on the FAQs, which are on the Key to the City website. The Key to the City, if you haven't seen it before, it's very easy. Just type in Key to NYC or Key to the City in any search engine, and you'll get right to it. There's an FAQ link on that page, and it's constantly updated. The most current update is as of yesterday. So if you looked at them at the early in this process back in August when the mandate went out, prior to the enforcement, which began about 2 weeks ago, most of the things have stayed the same. There are a couple of small changes, which I will point out in my presentation, but you do want to keep up to date and check that page somewhat regularly, because those FAQs are being updated day to day. It's not easy to find out what, you really have to sort of drill down to find out what the changes are. I wish New York City was like LA in this regard. I've been providing COVID-19 reopening guidance around the country, and LA is great because whenever they update a health order, they put in yellow highlights what they've changed from the last order, which makes it really easy to find out what they've changed. New York, it's not so easy, but do keep a look at that, and also the web pages that I'll put up at the end of this presentation, because there may be from time to time changes that might affect you or your business. Sorry. Oh, sorry, let me do it. Let's see. I just passed it. I'm not going to try to go around it. I just passed the first page, which is, can you test out of the vaccine requirement? The answer is no. In other jurisdictions that have vaccine mandates or other situations, for instance, the governor's mandate that healthcare institutions be fully vaccinated. There may be, or sorry, I should say specifically the school requirement that will start on Friday for public school teachers to be vaccinated or provide for testing. In the New York City Key to NYC mandate, there's no testing opt-out. You have to be vaccinated, and there's no way to test out of it. You can't avoid the mandate by having a PCR test or a rapid test within a certain amount of time before you have to be vaccinated. One big difference between the city's guidelines and the CDC guidelines is that to be vaccinated and to be allowed to go to restaurants, bars, and gyms in New York City, it does not mean fully vaccinated. Fully vaccinated, as defined by the CDC, is 2 weeks after your second dose in a 2-dose series, or 2 weeks after your first and only dose for a J&J vaccine. In New York City, it's as you see here, at least 1 dose of a COVID-19 vaccine. So so people who have started the process and presumably, hopefully, will finish the process of getting vaccines are allowed to participate in these activities, but it is not requiring fully vaccinated. And that's actually been, Deborah mentioned the lawsuits that have been filed against the vaccine mandate. One of them, the Staten Island restaurants, cited that saying, that the standard of New York City used was basically made up. That there's no recognized standard of being half vaccinated as being protective against the spread of COVID-19. So therefore, it was an arbitrary and capricious decision by the city to impose this mandate because they're using a standard that has not been recognized by medical authorities. So again, Deborah also mentioned, so what does a restaurant have to do in terms of checking the vaccination status if they're, not eating at the restaurant? So the restaurant does have to check vaccination status, except for the following situations. If it only offers takeout and delivery, meaning they have, if they may have tables, but they've cordoned them off, roped them off, taped them up, say you can't sit here. So it's not just whether it has tables; it's whether it actually is allowing for for sit down restaurants. Any restaurant that allows for sit down food may potentially have to ask its patrons for the vaccination card. But if it is specifically only doing takeout and delivery, as some fast casual restaurants have gone to in order to avoid this mandate, they don't have to ask for it. As Deborah mentioned also, if the customer is entering the restaurant for a quote, very quick and limited purposes, and again, the FAQ specifically cite these examples: using the bathroom, picking up food, paying a bill, or changing in a locker room. And this is one of those places where the FAQ answers on this subject have changed from the beginning of this process, from when we did this presentation a year ago. The former standard was using the bathroom or entering for another reason that will take a small amount of time, e.g. fewer than 10 minutes. They have taken that 10-minute standard out of the FAQs and now put in these sort of very quick and limited. I figure that, my guess is that people were sort of timing their entrances and saying, well, if it's less than 10 minutes, then I'm okay. So that's why they've sort of taken out that 10-minute standard and made it sort of very quick and limited purposes with a couple of examples. So there, again, that's one of the, sort of the guidance about making sure that you check the FAQs frequently, because again, the changes may not be major, but there are changes that have occurred from time to time, especially since this program began, in terms of the city's guidance on these issues. If a patron's coming in for one of those reasons, they have to wear masks and social distance. And again, as you know, children under 12 are not able to get the vaccine yet, so they obviously can't show proof of vaccination, but they have to wear a mask except while eating or drinking if they're not able to maintain social distance. Do you have to check that the vaccination status of suppliers and vendors? No, not for for the UPS or FedEx person. If someone's coming in to make a one-day repair on your air conditioning system or your HVAC or your washer dryer or whatever that thing is, they do not, you don't have to check their vaccination status, or of course if they're delivering your food, they do have to wear a face mask and keep social distance as well. What do you have to check? So again, here's a little. So whose information you need to check includes, and then these are specifically meant to the FAQs: employees, patrons, interns, contractors, and I'll get back to that in a second, and volunteers. A key to NYC established despite proof of vaccination. At the beginning of the vaccine mandate, only contractors who were residents of New York City had to display proof of vaccination. Now it is any contractor that is working at your establishment. And a contractor is somebody who's going to be there for a series of days, as opposed to somebody who is, you have you call a plumber, the plumber comes in, is there for an hour and then fixes your problem and leave. That's not a contractor. A contractor is going to be somebody who is coming in for, a series of work at that establishment. For that person who's going to be there on a consistent basis, you do have to require proof of vaccination, regardless of where they are residents. Businesses do not have to keep a record of who they've gotten vaccination for, but of a lot of establishments, especially if it's like a private club or a gym where somebody's going to be coming on a regular basis, they are able to keep that record so that they don't have to ask for that proof for that gym member or that frequent restaurant goer every time he or she enters the establishment. So it's their option, but obviously, if it's an establishment that's going to have people coming back again and again, they're likely to want to figure out a way to keep that information. Sufficient proofs may be displaying your vaccination card, which means that you don't have to have the physical card, as you know, when you go to a restaurant or a bar or a gym. You can have it on a multitude of apps or other forms of showing it. So it's displaying. It doesn't mean actually having the physical card. As Deborah mentioned, it's not up to the establishment to prove that to prove that the vaccination card is real. There is a method for them to report a card that they believe is fake. This is becoming an issue. It's becoming an issue as you may expect on college campuses, in the same way that the old run-of-the-mill fake ID was an issue. Now there has been an issue that Senator Schumer has talked about on college campuses with regard to fake vaccination cards. But the employer has no, I mean, the establishment has no obligation to actually verify that it's a real card. And in addition to your vaccination card, you're also required to have a proof of ID that matches the information on your vaccination card. And there's various forms of it. It's driver's license, passport, but it can also be an ID NYC or a school or work ID explained with the same information. And that every establishment has to ask for that ID from anybody who they think may be 18 or older. And they can ask it for anybody who's between 12 and 18. So what does the covered entity need to have to present on inspection? As Deborah mentioned, there's the vaccination poster. You're not required to use the poster that the city puts out. You can make your own poster. There are certain requirements that are in the FAQs. One thing I want to mention is that an inspector may not actually know that you can do your own. You can actually put up your own poster. I had a situation with a client. Again, this was with regard to the state requirements for retail. Not specifically these New York City requirements. And this was back in January, but they made their own template for the information that a retail business required, and the inspector actually cited them for not using the state form. We had to go to oath, the hearing tribunal of the city, and appear before an administrative law judge. And I had to show that no, the state rules at the time did not require you to use the actual state poster. It allowed you to use your own as long as you had had the same information. And the ALJ ended up dismissing it completely on behalf of my client. So one thing is that the inspectors may not there's a lot of information that they're supposed to have. And this is a situation where an inspector may go to and say, well, you don't have you have the required poster up. You need to have that up, and if a business may say no, we're allowed to have a sign as long as it has the same information. That business is right, but it is possible in that situation, and it actually happened to a client that the inspector was not aware that a business could use its own type of poster. Business also has to have an implementation plan that's available for inspection, which shows how you're going to check the vaccination status of people. And also, if you are going to be holding on to information about regular patrons, how you're planning to check that information and maintain that information going forward. And yeah, so it's important to know that Key to NYC is a floor, not a ceiling. So covered businesses, they can require a full vaccination, using the CDC standards for entry more than what the Key to NYC requires. And a very important example of that is Broadway. And I handle external government relations for the Broadway League, which is the consortium of the 41 Broadway theaters. As you may know, if you have theater tickets or planning to go to the theater, and please go, Broadway is back and wants to see you. But Broadway, even before the Key to NYC came out, announced that it's going to require vaccinations for audience members, performers, crew, and staff, at least through October 31st, and I would expect probably longer. And people have to wear masks in addition to being vaccinated in order to patronize a show. The question is, of course, you want to take your child to see The Lion King. Can you still do that? The answer is yes. Those who can't be vaccinated as well as those who might have a medical condition that prevents them from being vaccinated, are still able to attend. They have to provide proof of a negative COVID PCR test within 3 days, 72 hours, or a negative antigen test, a rapid test, within 6 hours of the start of the performance. Here's something that I think is important. You know, what does KEED NYC not apply to? Does it apply to your office cafeteria, your apartment building, your apartment building gym, your office gym, your senior center? The answer is no. That the indoor dining requirement, entertainment and fitness, the requirements don't apply if in your private residential building, if that gym is only available to your building's residents. If you allow outside people to come in, trainers or the like, then you are technically required to require vaccinations. A lot of buildings have actually, for their own safety, are requiring vaccinations. They're perfectly allowed to do that, but you're not required to if that residential gym is only available for the residents. Again, office cafeteria. If that office cafeteria is just for office staff, you are not required to have require vaccinations. Though some offices like Greenberg Traurig, where I am, and this is a national decision, are requiring vaccinations for all staff that are coming in the office, and in New York City are allowed to, even though that it's more than what the city requires in another field beyond restaurants and entertainment. Schools do not have to require vaccinations, though that is changing for teachers, but those students who are old enough to be vaccinated are not required to get them. Senior centers and community centers are exempt from KEED NYC, as well as, as we're about a month from Election Day, poll sites are not required, cannot require vaccinations, obviously, for anyone to vote. Here's, this is an issue which gets into very specifics. Again, we remind you to talk to your HR professional or your lawyer regarding any questions about if you're an employer, about the vaccination status of employees. Yes, for these covered businesses, you can ask the vaccination status and require them to be vaccinated, of course, but you can't treat an employee differently, because he or she, has a medical condition that prevents them from getting vaccinated. And then you have to provide reasonable accommodation to employees who require them based on a host of recognized reasons. And as long as providing that reasonable accommodation does not provide a direct threat to other customers, employees, or impose an undue hardship on your business. If you're only entitled to reasonable accommodations for needs based on on that disability. If your reason for not wanting the vaccine is not based on that disability, you have to get the vaccine, or the employer can take a negative employment action against you. And then the employer can ask for appropriate documentation to confirm that you have that disability that prevents you from getting the vaccine. As everyone, there have not been any penalties yet, as far as I'm aware, but those penalties can add up. $1,000 for first violation, $2,000 up to $5,000, and for each violation. So those penalties can definitely add up if you don't address them. Now, are we sure that KEED NYC is going to go on as it's currently been implemented? As Deborah mentioned, a group of businesses in Bay Ridge and Staten Island have sued over the vaccine mandate, as I mentioned before, that it's arbitrary and capricious, in part because the one-dose standard, as required by the KEED NYC, has sort of, is not the CDC standard. Also, another lawsuit, a group of off-Broadway theaters that are used when they're not having shows, they're used for religious services, have sued, saying that it's an arbitrary and capricious mandate because the standard should be the same for both church services, which don't require vaccinations, as well as for theater, which do, saying that people are still sitting as close as they would be in a theater that's being used for theater versus being used for religious service. So how can you have a different standard for them? That lawsuit was filed by some, as you mentioned, that these are off-Broadway theaters, not the Broadway theaters, which are all which have supported the vaccine mandate. As you may recall, also during the pandemic, it was the state that was issuing these requirements with regard to these types of businesses, not the city. Those restrictions expired in mid-June when the governor declared that the vaccination rate for these first doses hit 70%. But Governor Hochul has stated that she's open to all options regarding indoor vaccine mandates and has held very firm with regard to healthcare workers, as you've seen, to the point that some workers are, may be terminated for not getting a vaccine. So it is always possible, as you know, New York City is a creature of the state, and New York City has relatively limited home rule. So if the state, enters in this area again and issues a mandate or a mandate that's different from New York City, that may trump New York City's mandate, or may change, that you may have to follow state rules that are in the same space as New York City. At the moment, that hasn't happened. New York State does have requirements for large venues, which are bigger than Broadway theaters for those that seat 5,000 or more. So big sort of concert arenas. There are rules that apply to the state that supersede or overlap the city rules, but at the moment that's really the only case where with restaurants and gyms and regular under entertainment venues under 5,000, only the city rules comply. Here are some of the links. Again, just you don't have to write any of these down. Just go to type key to NYC in any search engine, and it'll send you the page which all these things will have. And then there's just my contact information. Feel free to reach out to me, connect with me on LinkedIn if you're not already, and any updates to these rules I will be posting. Again, we were only 2 weeks into the enforcement process, and it really hasn't sort of been clamped down yet. So when we start hearing about people getting fined and being upset about it, it's possible that these rules may change, or these guidance from the state, the city may change again. So again, keep on the lookout for any changes, and Deborah and I will continue to update you as well.
Thank you so much. Will, could you post the links that were at the end of Jonathan's presentation in the chat, and also contact information for Deborah and Jonathan there as well? I think to make it easier for anyone who would like it. And before we go to questions from the public and from board members, I'd like to just ask Will to do a brief protocol.
Yeah, of course. I'll post those into the chat in a second.
Thank you.
But I think most folks here have been to one of our meetings before, but just in case you haven't, if you'd like to ask a question of either our presenters, just go to the reactions icon at the bottom of your screen and find the raise hand button there, and press that, and look out for a prompt whenever Alita calls on you to confirm unmuting. If you're calling in from the phone, it's *9 to raise your hand and *6 to unmute. If you're using an older version of Zoom, you may need to go to the participant section where you can find the raise hand feature there. So if you have any questions, go ahead and find that button, and Alita will call on you.
Okay, I see Kaz has a question, and I do as well, but Kaz, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm not sure who this question would be for, but some of these outdoor structures are worse than the indoors. They're enclosed, they've got no circulation. So should these be regulated as indoor or not? That is one question. My other question is, you're asking the restaurants to basically be the enforcer of the DOT or DOH. Why not have, once the inspector comes, he's going to say, well, you did not do my job, therefore I'm going to fine you. Why not have the fine on the person that enters an establishment that is unvaccinated rather than the establishment? And then why isn't the staff of the restaurants included in the list of booster shots? Aren't they a necessary worker?
Staff is required to get vaccinated, Kaz.
No, but not the booster.
Well, not everyone's yet going to be eligible at this juncture, so that could change.
No, but they have it for grocery store. I go into a grocery store, I'm there for what, 2-3 minutes?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
I see what you mean. Yeah, those are policy, questions, and the in terms of what the city and what the federal government have viewed as warranting a booster, such as those who are 65 or older, have health conditions. So again, those are all questions, and they're all policy questions, which are good. That's sort of beyond the scope of this. We're really here to sort of tell you what those rules are. Deborah, do you want to answer the question about the what an indoor establishment is?
So generally speaking, those outdoor structures are, because they're open on one end and should be, they are not considered indoor structures requiring proof of vaccination. However, I certainly understand the concern over that, because many of those structures seem like they would be worse than sitting inside, because they don't have the air circulation systems that an indoor dining establishment would. But as of now, I have not seen anything, I don't know if Jonathan has, where one of those structures was somehow considered to be an indoor establishment that is not following the rules.
Right. No, and again, you have this Key to NYC mandate colliding with the open restaurants program, and you have to sort of figure out how to operate both of them. And I know that that you recently had a deadline for weighing in on where the community board stood on the continuation of open restaurants, and city planning is going to be making a decision, and the council. So, but you're right. These they don't necessarily intersect exactly right in terms of what Key to NYC wants you to do and open restaurants wants you to do. And I think that as we go forward, and I assume that even that open restaurants, at least the emergency declaration that allowed open restaurants, is going to continue at least for the next year, while decisions are being made as to whether to keep it permanently. That should will hopefully be addressed, where situations where Key to NYC and open restaurants don't necessarily interlock with each other properly.
thanks.
So all of your questions were answered then?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Matt?
Hi, thanks for calling me. Great presentation, really appreciated both of them. They really were very, very helpful. One quick thing I just wanted to mention, because you guys were mentioning how the rules were changing. And one of the things that, or items that we have seen a change since the very beginning of the unveiling of Key to NYC is with art galleries. And I saw them in the list of the businesses that were required to participate in Key to NYC. And I think my understanding is that they have been removed from that categorization. Because they're considered a retail establishment, and other retail establishments are not required to follow the Key to NYC mandates. They can, and I know a number of galleries are still requiring vaccinations, but it's not my understanding is that it's been removed from the Key to NYC requirement list.
Yeah, it's very possible. As I said, unfortunately, when they changed the FAQ responses in New York, they don't sort of tell you what they changed. So you have to sort of, look for your particular issue. And so it is. So and again, that's not, as I work with Broadway, I haven't worked with the art community. So it's not something that I particularly follow, but it's possible that due to advocacy from galleries that they were removed. I don't know that specifically, but if there is that list in the FAQs, and if it's not on there, as I said, in San Francisco, which has the most similar mandate to New York, entertainment venues are not even on the list at all. It's sports, large scale sports venues, it's restaurants and gyms, but broad theater and art galleries and all that are not even contemplated in that.
Thank you.
Thank you. I have a few questions. To follow up on Kaz about the outdoor dining, one of the issues that the board grappled with during the winter was that these outdoor establishments are nothing like outdoors. They don't comply with the rules requiring open space at all. They seal up, they have closed windows and closed doors. And yet, when we asked the Department of Transportation about them, they said that the public needed to call specifically and complain about the failure of restaurants to comply with the requirements. So what happens as the weather gets colder and these outdoor places turn into indoor spaces on the sidewalk or in the street, in the roadway? And do you know if there's any mechanism or interest in applying the vaccine requirement to those spaces?
From my perspective, from what I've seen, and I know Jonathan's more in tune with what's going on from a governmental standpoint, I have not seen any push to require them to provide, be subject to the same rules as the indoor spaces. My other concerns that have nothing to do with this is a lot of them seem like they are the DOB should be considering them structures and looking at them for structural integrity and electrical compliance, because it looks like a lot of restaurants, and not faulting anyone, are trying to keep those structures are expensive to build, and they're trying to keep costs down. And I've noticed a lot of what I view to be some very odd electrical work where things like a cord is extending out to the street and it's not covered. And so I think this goes beyond our discussion here to more of potentially a DOB issue.
Yeah, and I think that goes more towards the open restaurants. I do know that DCP and DOT are looking into this in terms of if they continue the open restaurants program permanently. I know that one thing is that they're going to require that the outdoor structures be removable, so that if there is an emergency or snow removal or whatever, that they are able to be removed, and that may make the sort of contraptions that are set up for outdoor dining, less sort of like MacGyver, because they potentially would have to remove them. But again, this is sort of beyond our scope. But I do know that may be some that those kind of issues are being considered by DCP and DOT as they sort of figure out what the future of this program is.
Yeah, it just seems that if the purpose of the indoor vaccine mandate is to help keep business at a steady level by making customers comfortable by going in and taking off masks, such as to eat or being close to people in a theater, for instance, that although the outdoor space doesn't apply to theaters, that having the mandate apply to outdoor / indoor, I mean, at least that's how I think of them. They're really indoor spaces outside, would seem to be useful, because I didn't eat in any of those last year over the winter. I just got takeout because they didn't feel safe. So I would feel comfortable going into a place that has a vaccine mandate. Although to Deborah's point, I think earlier, it sounded like just 40% of businesses are not complying. If out of the 5,000 businesses that inspectors visited, 2,000 were not complying. That's a pretty high number. And that doesn't make me, and then coupled with the lack of signs that Deborah sees in our neighborhood and the ones that I saw when I was bringing around these flyers the other day, it's a little bit disconcerting that there is such a lack of compliance, which is just really a comment, less of a question, I suppose.
I think, we're just starting the enforcement period because there was a month of transition after that. So I think that, I think we need to see when they actually started enforcing, like actually how many they find. I can tell you that since the enforcement period began, every restaurant that I've been to, which is not many, but a few, have asked for it. And even I went to a coffee shop, and once they saw that I was sitting down, they actually came, from behind the counter and checked my vaccine status once I sort of made clear that I was gonna stay for a while. So I think it's still a process, and you want to put in another burden on businesses, but at some point they're going to start enforcing, and then we'll be able to specifically track how many businesses and what percentage of them are compliant.
Yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I noticed one business in the neighborhood put out a very large, like, sandwich board sign saying, if you want to dine inside, you must show a vaccine card. And I thought, you know what, that's smart, because there is some element of people coming from out of town or thinking, it's not really going to be enforced. So being, warned before you enter into the restaurant may have some value.
Yeah, it's hard because you don't want to put more burden on restaurants, but if it makes people feel comfortable and to go inside and have dinner or lunch or a drink, that's probably a good thing. Do you know, I believe some European countries such as Italy have a strict vaccine requirement for indoor dining. Do you know whether is there any way to measure effectiveness, I guess is what I'm trying to find a way to ask. And whether business has increased, whether there are changes in COVID numbers, anything like that?
So from my understanding, I mean, there are methods, and I think they were being used at first when there were, outbreaks where when people were going back into salons, for example, they were looking to see through contact tracing what percentage of those people had been in a salon or a restaurant, and they were putting the numbers together. And I had seen a lot of medical literature where they were ranking the things where you're most at risk, and that was before people were even vaccinated. So I think there is a way to gather that data. I'm unaware of any international data through the World Health Organization, but it may well exist.
I mean, certainly again, this is outside the scope, but it's certainly the vaccine mandate such as for healthcare workers is definitely increasing the number of people getting the vaccines, and where the mandates have occurred, the percentage of vaccination, as employers are requiring people to, or governments are requiring people to get a vaccine to go back to work, that certainly is having an increase, increasing the vaccine percentages where teachers or healthcare workers or the like are required in order to get one, in order to not lose their jobs.
So, Jonathan, since you work with the hospitality industry, with hotels, has this vaccine mandate changed the numbers of people coming to visit New York? Because we know that tourism is such a driver of the New York economy, and we have major museums on the Upper East Side, for instance. So do people feel more comfortable, or are they more resistant to coming because of the vaccine mandate? Do you have any idea?
I don't think it's been a factor. I think the big factor is going to be now, when they're going to be allowing European travelers to come to the U.S. with, as long as they're mandated. So I think that people, again, this is way beyond, but I think that, other countries have sort of, there's been more of a sense of we're all in this together, and the U.S. because of the polarization and so I know sort of the, mentality, just, there isn't that same sort of sense of things. So I think that, in other countries, if they have a vaccine, I mean, what's remarkable about the U.S. is that we created the vaccine. We used to be number one, and now we're like, I think just number 36 or something like that in percentages of people vaccinated. And when anybody who wants one can get one, as opposed to other countries where you have to scramble for one. And that's, I think there's a sense of a lot of political issues, but I think that if people want to travel to the U.S. and the vaccine will allow them to do so, it's certainly the lifting of the embargo on European travel. That's going to be what gets tourists back, and hopefully, all going to Broadway when that embargo is lifted.
Yeah, I was just wondering if people from, let's just say, Texas, for instance, or Louisiana, maybe, are not visiting before the embargo, the so-called embargo, was lifted, and Europeans or other countries were allowed to come. I see Kaz has his hand raised. Will, would you unmute Kaz? And thank you, Jonathan.
And I should mention, I do have a hard stop at 5:15, so but I can stay until that.
Okay.
Yeah, I see Rebecca's rep is here. Is there any possibility of getting state information on what is going on at the state level for the city?
Just like as it updates, or are you looking for like an update as it is now?
Any good news you have?
Well, I don't really wasn't prepared for this. Sorry, so I don't have like any information in front of me. But it's definitely something that, if you'd like, we can always share with the community board any updates that do happen, and as frequently as we do know them. But I mean, today the big news is that we do have a new health commissioner. That's really what we've been watching. But I don't really have any like information to present at this time. No.
Okay, but the state is kind of working on rules and regulations statewide or not?
Yeah, I believe, the new governor, she's, working on that pretty thoroughly. I think it's more of a, I think her biggest fight right now is in the education department, is trying to get teachers and educators vaccinated is really the fight that she's been fighting at this time.
Okay.
So I mean, the governor has issued a mandate for healthcare workers, and now you're seeing that the healthcare workers' vaccine percentages have gone up markedly. She is considering mandates for teachers, though has not issued anything to that effect. I think we'll wait to see. I think that the issue in New York City, they were issued, and then the judge stayed them, and now they're back and starting on Friday. So, but she's she has said she's open to mandates of any of these kinds, and we'll collect the information and in order to make those decisions. But she has publicly said that she's open to discussion on any of these issues.
Yeah, and also, I mean, I always tell clients if they're interested in state requirements, New York Forward, it was great at the beginning, updating information, but that might also be another resource to the extent.
Right. All those state guidelines that we all lived by for over a year, you can still see them, but they're in the archive section of New York Forward. Almost they were all suspended back in mid-June, and the legislature actually took away the power of the then governor to issue further mandates or extend them without legislative permission. So again, other than like the large venue guidance and one or two others, those state guidelines have gone away. But as I mentioned before, the state, the city is a creature of the state, and if the state wants to play in this area, that might change. Then and the state mandate overlaps the city. That might change what we're doing in the city. But for right now, there's nothing on the state level that affects any key to NYC establishment except for those big concert venues.
Thank you. I guess it would be interesting to know also if business at these indoor establishments increases as people feel healthy or safe going into them. I don't know how those numbers are figured out. I'm not a statistician or a compiler, but I think that's what would concern me, for instance, is going in and feeling comfortable.
The Hospitality Association, which is the largest group of does support it. There are members that have been opposed to it, but as a whole, the restaurant community seems to be if this what makes people feel comfortable coming to a restaurant, we'll do it. Now they have other issues in terms of just finding enough staff right now. Restaurants have had a tough time just finding enough people to work at the restaurants. But I don't think it's a question of because people are afraid to get vaccinated. I think it's because there's been benefits that have been keeping people together, and there are other people are sort of reviewing their lives at this point. But I think that the restaurant community, a majority, not a unanimous, but a majority of the restaurant community has supported these mandates.
Just before you go, Jonathan, one quick question, because I went into a hotel yesterday on the Upper East Side to ask about this. I didn't see any sign for vaccines. Are hotels required to have vaccine?
No, that's not. No, it's not. No, they're restaurants. Maybe, but if it's a hotel that just has grab and go, there's no requirements. That said, a lot of hotels, like I'm a Marriott person, so I say to them, they're all, they all have, ask you to wear masks while in there, and and limit the people in an elevator. But no, hotels are not part of this unless there is a restaurant in the hotel, and then this would apply to that hotel restaurant, in the same way as now again, this, hotel gyms, this does apply to, because those gyms are public, I mean, you have to be a guest, but they are, it's not like a residential building. So at one hotel, and I've said in New York, they actually, the only way to get into the gym is to go to the front desk, show your vaccination card, and then they give you a key to let you into the gym, and that they don't have more than a certain number of people at any time. So, but yeah, only the parts of the hotel that are in the key to NYC mandate would be affected. Not you don't need to be vaccinated to get a room.
Or I was thinking more not to get a room, but to hang out in the lobbies, for instance.
No, there's no, it would be the restaurant or the gym, but not just to walk into the hotel or grab something from the hotel, or even to, if they let you use the bathroom, not to, you could use the bathroom without being checked.
Thank you. Anyone else? Any other questions? Well, I don't see any hands raised. Thank you so much, Deborah. Thank you so much, Jonathan. It was great. It was extremely informative, and you were very generous with your time to give it to us for the benefit of the community. So thank you so much.
Thank you for the invitation.
It's my great pleasure to have you here. So for members of the committee or anyone else, is there any old business? Any new business? Okay, so before we adjourn, I just want to promote the October 4th meeting. We'll have at least someone from the 19th precinct to talk about safety, given what's gone on a little bit on the Upper East Side. And we will also have a presentation from someone who is at TikTok on using social media, which could be really useful for people who are agitated about the vaccine rules and give restaurants or other businesses negative reviews, which I know is a concern of some places. So for any businesses interested in learning how to master social media, and it's not just Instagram and Facebook or Twitter anymore, it's also TikTok, then please join us on October 4th at our usual time. Otherwise, thank you everyone for joining. Is there a motion to adjourn? Well, if you guys want to hang out, that's fine. Cause? Yes?
Cause, Barry.
Okay, then we'll consider this meeting to be adjourned, and thank you, everyone.